What up, everybody out there in podcast land? Thank you for tuning in yet again to another episode of Ken Ross Present the Get Asset and Podcast. We express with our full capabilities to the Mike Wonderson Correctional Facilities, which I swear gets closer and closer every day. Brainchild of my child, I am the dad half of this operation. Ross Cooper, as always, I am rocking with the best, coming to you live and in public, if you will. But I am rocking with the best. My co-host, please introduce yourself to the folks.
A wise man can see even a peasant has a king in him. Yeah, what's good, everybody? Everybody's having a good day, month, year, hour, second, all that good stuff. You watch it on other platforms. Please share with your friends, your family, enemies, bug on the wall, aliens outside, mailman, all that good stuff. And if you watch it on the tube, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Because if you don't, you're gonna hit your toe like I did yesterday on my bed frame.
Damn, bro, that's you gotta start wearing slides in the house. That's all I got.
That's the
I
only
gotta
thing
start
that
wearing
saved me.
slides in the house.
That's the only thing that saved me. I still felt it.
Oh, well, this is going to be awesome. Um, we have an amazing guest today, someone that I've known for quite some time, someone I've actually looked up to, a wise griot, an activist, and I've just learned so much from being around. Um, and I'm still shortchanging it. There's so much more I could say, but I think a lot of it we'll get into momentarily. But please, sir, introduce yourself to the folks.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of those kind words. May I strive to earn to be worthy of all of that. Uh, I go by the name Analysis. I am a poet, spoken word artist. I am a radical left minister. I am a worker owner of a collective project called Red Emma's Bookstore Coffee House. That's red like the color. Emma's, like the name with an apostrophe S, Bookstore Coffee House in Baltimore, Maryland, which is also my hometown and where I currently live. And I have been a few other things over the years. So that's the short thing. I'm sure we'll get into whatever else we need to get into.
Yeah. See, I've so for those who've been paying attention and those who haven't, besides this, besides bodybuilding and things of that nature, poetry is my passion as well. And I spent a nice stretch of time in Baltimore where my co-host is, obviously. But I got to meet some real radical isn't a proper word. I got to meet some very, what I'd like to say, forward thinking people who turned me on to some levels of thought. And I will say this, and you two can probably confirm it. When you come to the conclusion that you don't go along to get along, when the norm doesn't feel right, it don't sit right in your soul, you can be made to feel odd by those who are going along with the program. So when I got finally introduced to the poetry community and that collective and that group of thinkers, I'm like, you all are still who I reach out to, who I bounce things off of now. It's like, wait, am I crazy or is everybody else? And I am so happy to have found this collective, people like yourself, Beatrice Moore, Roscoe Burnham's, like I can name a list of people from my poetry family, and they were all there for me when I had my medical event, but from my poetry family that reinforced, okay, we ain't strange. We just see things differently and in a way that is more conducive to aiding and helping the people, not the pocketbook.
You know, June Jordan, among others, has talked about the need for poetry. And I can't believe I never memorized this quote of her, but in essence, she says that um, poetry is political, poetry is necessary, poetry is one of the tools. If we're talking about societal change, poetry is a necessary part of that. That's a real, you know, précis of what she said. I ought to look it up sometime while we're on here to get it. But uh, one of my favorite quotes about poetry is one of Langston Hughes' favorite quotes about poetry. Another name, obviously, that you know from the context that you just described, and many people's, and I love that quote because it's a reminder to us that poetry, it does what you were just talking about. You know, it enlightens people. It gives people empowerment to act. It educates people. It is another way to get across certain things.
Mhm.
And I think that's what you're hitting on. I have a poem about the mascot issue, you know, Indians, Redskins, and all that shit
Love
called
that poem.
Sportscast. Would you remember? And
Yes.
I remember doing it one time. You will of course remember Be Free Fridays, one of the late great venues in Baltimore. And I remember getting off the mic there with it after having just done it one time, and one of the brothers pulled me aside and said, "Look, I never really understood what all the fuss was about, what all the hoopla was about until now, until listening to you do this piece." You know, and that made me feel very firm in that, you know, poetry can do that. Poetry, in addition to the essay is needed, in addition to the history, in addition to the listing of facts, all of that is crucially needed. And you would think that would be enough. But as we know from all these knuckleheads out in society, you can try to show them that 2 + 2 is 4, and they're gonna say it's 6.5. So
Mhm.
so something, you need the artistic expression also. They need to hear it in a song, in a poem, in a piece of visual art, in a novel. All right. Um, you know, even in terms of dance and the theater and what, so the art has to kick in also to kind of reinforce certain lessons and teachings and to give people some more ingress into understanding things. And so it does my heart good to hear you talk about the way in which the Baltimore and the DMV area community, uh, poetry family was really that for you as it has been for so many of us. And as you
Mhm.
noted, you know, it went beyond just poems. It wasn't just on the mic. You know, that became extended fam.
Exactly.
Certainly when I lived in Connecticut, which is where I was born into poetry, so to speak, during the 3 years I was up in Connecticut, the poets, that was my extended fam, that was my crew, that was my set of friends, you know, in addition to being fellow artists that were bringing me in and nurturing me in this art form of poetry, of spoken word.
Absolutely. That's right. Which leads to, and I'm not going to dive too deep, but I'm just curious on your take, real quick, because my co-host and I are going to have a nice debate about this. Um,
And I'm looking forward to sitting back and listening to y'all. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, let me, disclaimer to all the wonderful listeners and viewers of the program. There's probably going to be a whole lot of shit talk about that I will be out of and way behind because my finger's not on the pulse of a number of popular culture things. My finger ain't on the pulse of a whole lot of stuff in the way that it may once have been. Um, so I will put in my 1.3 cents. I can, but y'all gonna have to, if you want to get it to a quarter, y'all gonna have to flesh it out because there's a whole lot of stuff. But anyway, having said that, yeah, go ahead.
so I'm curious because he and I are going to have a real debate about this, but there were conversations about the upcoming Beyonce tour. Now, how does this matter in the grand scope of things? Here's what I noticed. There's a lot of talk, strictly from what I find to be our people, about her overpricing or pricing people out of the market because of the price of the tickets, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. And I said, my problem with that conversation is this. It's being had from the standpoint of a consumer, not a creative. What does that mean? My thought process is, if I, again, it goes back to what we just talked about with poetry. If I can create something that makes you shift how you think, that makes you look at life differently, that pulls you out of a dark place, that enlightens, is there really an appropriate price tag for that? Because I hear a lot of, oh, those tickets are $500, $5,000, should they be charged and all of that? Think about what's being done for you though. When you have a bad day, you throw on a song. When you have a great day, you throw on a song. How much is what do you pay to see Frankie Beverly in such, dude, Before I Let Go live? The feeling you get from that. Basically, where I'm going is, I don't necessarily know that there's a point where you compensate an artist too much for their art. My wonderful co-host seems to think otherwise, and I'll let him explain his viewpoint. But I'm like, no, you can't say, oh, these tickets cost too much, especially since you work for $1 billion. One has nothing to do with the other. It is the experience that you cannot put a price tag on. Music, art, it does not have a finite price tag. At least I don't think so. But to that you say.
I wanted to hear Kane first.
I see. She's worth $1 billion. So is her husband. So yeah, artwork is priceless. I understand that. But if you're pricing out the people who you're helping, then are you really helping them? When you really you are set for generations. Just between yourself and then you add your husbands, that's even more generation. Your kids is gonna be good. Right? So I'm not saying you can do a free show or you have to do one. That would be great. That would be real showing out, the art for the people, if you're really for the people. Especially in this time when everything and everyone is getting priced out anyway, off of just normal stuff. So now I gotta put aside extra a lot of money and save just to see entertainment part of it. And I'm just like, all right, cool. $500, $5,000 for a ticket. I understand all the work that goes into it, especially Beyonce. She's one of the greatest artists of all time and performers of all time. I understand that. But I can't look past you're worth $1 billion. And this is a horrible time to be upcharging stuff because we already are in a huge recession or whatever you want to call it. The president's day right now, So yeah, I just think, if she truly cared about the arts, since your whole argument is about art and not about money, but yet you keep making it about money. So I'm just saying, if she really wanted to do something, then do free shows or just do some cheaper ones. You can afford it. You're not hurting. You talking like this is a new artist that has nothing right now. She has everything the world has to offer. She's in the 1% of the population that will never ever get there, no matter how hard they try. Sad but true. So yeah, I'm just saying, hey, her art is priceless. She is all-time great. I understand that, but if people are complaining about the prices, they have a right to complain about the price, especially now. And especially what she's worth. It's not like she needs any more. You know what I'm saying?
It's been so long since I've been to a concert in terms of like a major, major ticket, paid a major ticket concert that I don't even know what things are going for these days. What's the last big major ticket concert I've been to? It might go all the way back to the 2000s, to the aughts, when I lived up in Cleveland. I know that I paid $140 for the Police. There was the one year that the Police reunited.
Wow.
And they got back on tour. And they're one of my all-time favorite artists, the Police and Sting and that type of thing. Unless he has repented of such, I got the word a while back that Sting was supporting the Zionist genocide. Hopefully I'm incorrect on that because it breaks my heart for one of my all-time favorite musicians, but that's another stuff. I'm sure we'll come back to some of that stuff. But I must have paid somewhere. It was somewhere around there, 140. Now, so that's like 2000 and maybe 7 or something. So extrapolate whatever that would be on today's dollar. I'm not sure. But even if you bring it up to today's dollar, that's still not that much for one of the all-time, for the one reunion year of one of the all-time groups. So all I know about what Bay is pricing is what you all are telling me now. And it sounds like what I gathered from your conversation that 500 is the cheap ticket. 500 is way up in row double Z behind the post.
Right.
You better you need to bring your binoculars to see the thing.
Right.
So I do definitely affirm the value of artists, and artists need to be able to be compensated in a way that reflects the effort in a way that the market can provide in some just way. So we as artists do not need to be out here underselling ourselves. I say we. I'm gonna put me and my little, half broke ass in the same category as uh, uh, Ms. Beyonce and her husband, Mr. Jay-Z, who have more money than they really know even what they want to do with. But we as artists should not be undercompensated. As the expression goes, yesterday's price is not today's price. And I think that it's more of a challenge and more of a conversation for those of us on the low end of that pay spectrum. If you and I out here trying to contract with a college to do a whole show of poetry, we want to make sure that we're compensated in a proper way. We know that depends on the budget of the college. Little community college doesn't have as much budget as since you're down there in the Lone Star State these days. Little community college don't have the budget of UT Austin. So you may not charge the community college as much. But as long as they are coming from out of their budget to respect you with something, and you work out some kind of show that reflects their budget. If it's UT Austin, you expect to get paid in full.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Run the jewels.
Having said that, though, where I resonate with Kane on this is that, if we're talking about cheap seats at $500 and $700, we're talking about legitimate views at $2,000 tickets and what have you. And if that's all that's going on, and there's no, hey, but I'm gonna come do the show in the park, over the summer, or hey, we're gonna set up the low price ticket for a couple shows, at the such and such, whatever. I don't even know what low price is these days. Maybe $120 is dirt cheap these days. So, but someone set the low price up so that people can hear you. I would like to see that. I would like to see them do that because they do have more money than they know what to do with. So they can afford to set up something where maybe and set it up so that maybe some of the unfortunate folk can come hear you. Maybe it's set up, I don't know how, logistically how you do that, but set it up so that some of the lower budget folk, in the country can come hear you, or in other countries. Do something like that. You don't need to make $5,000 a ticket every concert. You're going to set up a concert like that, and there are people out here with $5,000 to spend, and there are people out here that will want to spend it on you. I'm not one of those persons. I neither have $5,000 to go to a concert, nor would I spend that money for a concert if I did have it. Okay. I don't go see the Capitals because I don't have money to spend on the Capitals, and I am a Caps fan. All right. But I will watch them from the comfort of my sofa or my good chair. I will get the nice views that those expert camera operators will give me, which would be much better than the view that I can afford up in row double Z, seat 49, and be sipping on my healthy plant-based snacks from my own kitchen because I can't afford the Caps tickets. And if I can't afford the Caps tickets, then I damn sure can't afford
Yeah, I see.
hearing Bay and Z charging. So I think there's a balance out there. I do have, if that's all they're doing, if they're just going for the super high without some kind of something or another, some kind of balance in that, I think I do have some problems with that. But artists should be compensated.
I agree.
But they aren't typical financially. They aren't typical. This is not you and me, Ross, trying to go out here and feature
Right,
something.
right, right.
You know,
This ain't the $100 at Bus Boys and Poets, right?
you know.
I just, like I said, understanding the value of art, and it's like I said, I think a lot of the times the conversation comes from the standpoint of the consumer, not the creative. And as someone who has created art, you can't properly, I don't believe, put a certain price tag on that, especially music, which is pretty much the baseline or the soundtrack for so many of our lives, for so many things. Like you think about your high school, you think about your high school, your prom, you think about the song that was playing. You think about a date, or you think about a girl, and you think about what song reminds you of her. And I'm like, now the person that created that, that is emblazoned that memory in your head, how can you say, that's too much of a charge? That's too much of a charge for it. Like, understand the value that they have added to your life, how they've enhanced the memory. But I was just curious how another creative saw this, and we're gonna have a much longer extended conversation, probably on TikTok later. But I was just curious to have another creative to say, "Hey, where do you sit on this one?" So I appreciate that.
You know,
Um,
I can't. I'm sitting here trying to imagine the old crew back in the day, and now you got me curious as maybe to do some research in terms of like ticket prices in the '60s or the '70s. You know, per capita on whatever the dollar was that year versus income.
but
You
I'm like,
know, I,
think about the effect.
I shade to the great Roberta Flack who just passed on, who just joined the ancestors.
Mhm. I'm
Um,
like,
is Robert? Can you imagine Roberta and Donnie charging whatever the dollar, rate was that would
well,
be equivalent to a $3,000 seat or something or another? I can't imagine it, but I'm speaking without research. I don't know. I
true.
don't know.
But
Um,
here, oh gosh, that's you make a good point because
so it's as much as you talk about the song that changed your life. You know, there's plenty of people out here running around to this day singing Donny Hathaway's song for you.
Ooh.
I love you more than whatever it was.
oh my
But
god,
ain't gonna go and spend three. If Donnie were to raise from the dead, would not go spend $3,000 to go hear him because he'd be like, Donnie, I love you, but come on, man, come on, come on, come on, come
I'm
on.
conflicted because let's make it very real. I just got married a couple years ago. If Word Slave was like, hey, I need 1,000 to come perform, but I know what that perfect work of art song he has does. Or if Jahidi was like, I need a couple stacks to come perform, but I get Daughter of the Most High walking down the aisle, like I'm thinking about it. I'm seriously going to think about that because just there are certain moments I firmly believe that you cannot necessarily put a price tag on. And I think that's when, especially music, because a piece of art, a Mona Lisa or something like that, it's in your house, it's on the wall, what have you. But you can't recreate a musical moment. When can you imagine what it's like? The people who bought a Super Bowl ticket, and we all know Super Bowl tickets are ridiculously high priced. And I'm gonna move on to the meat of this in a moment. But the people who were at that Super Bowl when Prince sang Purple Rain in the rain. Come on. You if you pay £5 for that ticket, you ain't mad. Like you can't recreate that kind of art.
Here's your problem. Everyone can't afford it. So you're pricing out most of your fan base. That's my problem. And you're naming other artists. We talking about just Beyonce. This is what my point is. Only for Beyonce. Because that was what the topic was. And then we went on other tangents about other stuff. But I'm sure I'll have it on TikTok or whatever. But you can't overlook the net worth of who's behind this, and also the conditions that we live in now as a society that most people can't afford that, even though they want to. So you pretty much, I'm not gonna say selfishly, because like I said, get your money. You deserve to be compensated, but dog, there is a limit on stuff. I'm sorry, especially when you got a B next to your name, no pun intended. Is that, yo,
I like to
most
did
of
there.
my audience
I
is
have some
not
problem.
on.
I feel Kane though. I feel Kane on that. I have some. I think in entertainment and sports tickets, I think shit has gotten out of hand. I really do.
Right.
Um, uh, on
Oh,
some of these high end. You and I will never sniff that. You and I, as much as I daydream about getting back in shape and being the old man, the sextagenarian that makes it into the English Premier League, um, and what have you. That's in my mind. In this world, though, it's safe to say that there's a high chance that that will not happen. So I won't ever get a chance to be paid by Arsenal or Manchester City, and therefore I won't ever have a stake in what people are paying to go see a Manchester City game. Okay. Um, so I don't have any direct personal stake in those high money things. I'm down here as a rad left conscious indie artist, you know, trying to negotiate the stake in our budgets and to make sure we get compensated fairly. Now, let's go back to UT since we were just playing with them. I don't, if UT wants to let people in for free, or if they got some special, if they got the fundraiser for a legitimate cause, I'm not going to go down there and have to use my name to fundraise for designing a new weapon for the U.S. government or something. But let's say they're fundraising for something legitimate, and they're going to charge it's 150 dinner because they need to fundraise for something legitimate. Okay, then go ahead and charge 150 to play. So the venue obviously is a party in this, and the venue has a say in what they need to do. So UT needs to be able to cover the cost of their staff and food and my price and so forth, and still make enough money for the fundraiser that they were doing. All right. So then you go ahead and charge 150 a plate, knowing that most of the student body won't be at that particular function. But let's do a function where UT still pays me because UT has enough money to still pay me, where the student body can come in just for free or based on their student activity fees and hear me. Let's do both. But I don't know. I don't know.
All good, all good. Okay, to the meat of things. It has been a crazy time since inauguration. The things we have seen, I believe, in this country are unprecedented. I'm not sure well, I can't say I'm not sure what next is. This is pretty much Project 2025 coming to life, the thing that everyone said they had no idea what it really was. Well, now we're seeing it play out. Um, I am I have an unpopular opinion, which I've mentioned before on the show, and I'll reiterate it just so we can all stay on the same page. Honestly, for Black folk, this is not a huge deal. And what I mean by that is the things that we needed to do to unify, to look out for ourselves, to figure out next steps and next actions, that was true during the election cycle. That's been true since 1965. The things we need to do for ourselves has not changed. It maybe has probably moved up in urgency because of who sits in office, but what we need to do for ourselves hasn't changed. But neither here nor there. Where I'm going here is I'm just curious what your take is on the state of affairs currently. I'm not happy about watching things get laid to waste. Um, I've talked about the destruction of systems for a couple years now. We're seeing a shift in certain systems being finally put by the wayside, but this is not what I envisioned these systems falling looking like and being pretty much replaced with commerce. Someone had a very good analogy. Pretty much what we're watching is America being chopped up and sold off to the highest bidder. It's all got a dollar amount behind it, but I am happily independent. I'm neither red nor blue. I see the fuckery on both ends of this bird. But based on what you're seeing, man, what do you think? What is your thoughts on the state of things right now?
I mean, you hit on a lot of important things there. And so let me context my comments. I also am neither a registered Democrat or Republican. I have moved over the years far to the so when I identified myself, in introductions as a radical left minister, we can come back to the ministry part, but the radical left part of that, and you put 5 people or 10 people in a different room, you'll get a number of different definitions or connotations on what that may mean. But at the very least, at the base level, the way I use it in this country's social political framework, is I'm left of the duopoly. I'm left of the Republican Democrat duopoly. That doesn't mean just indie as an in between, but no, I'm left on it. I am well on the anarcho-socialist spectrum of life, and continuing to learn and continuing to grow in terms of what that means for me and what that means in terms of where I want to put my energy in organizing. But I'm well on the anarcho-socialist spectrum of life. So what that means in terms of the aforementioned duopoly is that, like you, I'm pissed with both sides and have been for a long time. The last time I was a registered Democrat was probably in the '08 to 12 stretch, 2008 to 2012. By the 2012 election, I disaffiliated with the Dems
That's an
because by
interesting time
then,
frame to do it. I do know what I was saying. That's an interesting time frame to do it because that was when
Obama.
right, yeah,
and and I have major, major fucking problems with him. I'm gonna say it clearly so that all your listeners
We
get
all
me
do.
in uncertain terms. So because with each passing year, so I mean, I grew up in Black civil rights family. Father was civil rights activist and was down on the Eastern Shore organizing, got beat by police down there in Cambridge and all that, and grew up in a church in a very highly educated middle class conscious church that was civil rights oriented. My late pastor, Reverend Wendell Phillips, was an organizer who networked with Malcolm, who networked with Martin, and so forth, and a whole bunch of other people that were my church elders, that I grew up looking at.
Mm.
So, so that's part of the context that I grew up in, and moving through young adult years, college years, and post-college years, getting more involved in the certain movements. Those were the anti-apartheid days. So, I went to undergrad at American in the '80s, and so all of the DC organizing against South African apartheid, and of course those were the days of Reagan. So everything that was going on around Reagan's imperialism around the world and the whole economic foolishness and that type of thing. So these things brought me conscious. I mean, there's a time as a youth that I slipped into some very right-wing theology and concomitant with that, some right-wing social political thought for a number of years. When I was in high school and I was actually a little Reaganite, but believe me, by the time I moved through college years, that definitely changed. And, you know,
Right.
so, uh,
Strategy was Alex P. Keaton for a while. Okay.
yeah, right. So, and then moved through the '90s, stay in touch, being active on certain issues and that type of thing. Went to seminary at Howard University School of Divinity, HU, and in the '90s, continued to be active in my denomination, United Church of Christ, on international issues and justice issues. This, in terms of my political framework, all of this time I'm still working within the framework of being a progressive Democrat, if you moving into the 2000s, continue to be a progressive Democrat, but having increasing problems with the failure of these mainstream Dems, of these centrist Dems, and looking at some things. So, it should be obvious, and it's not obvious to everybody in this country. Obviously, that's why we have this idiot in the White House now. But it should be obvious looking at the Reagans and the H.W. Bushes and the W. Bushes of the world. Their evil should be evident, okay? But there are too many people who get fooled by these mainstream Dems and they overlook these things. And so I began to take a more critical look at what the Clintons were doing and began to take a more critical look at some of these other Dems that were running for the White House and some of these folks. Barack comes along, and even during his first election campaign, I'm having these mixed feelings. I was living in Ohio at the time, and I would have these conversations, especially with other Black folk, who of course were rah-rah and gung-ho. And I get it. We as a people have been so stripped of representation and power and money that we get excited. And the problem is that the first time we see some brown skin in something, we go all in and gung-ho, and too many of us lose our critical analysis. All right. So even during Barack's first campaign, I was trying to tell people, look, this ain't Malcolm X we elected. Okay. Let's be clear. Okay, let's be clear. Would it be nice to see a Black president? Would it be fun? Would it be all of that type of thing? Sure, it would be. The election night, we all had tears in our eyes. We never thought we would see it. My father and I on the phone, boy, we never thought we would see it in our lifetime. Blah, 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 blah. And all of the celebration that in and of itself was that. But that was just a party for that. And we had to realize that the next day we had to keep a loving foot in his ass, as I used to tell people. And that did not happen enough. Nope. And the problem is that Barack was worse than I had concerns about. Turned out to be even worse. You saw signs of that right on. The corporate bailout.
Right. Woo, buddy, I've always argued.
You two are young to remember this, but there was this whole big in the recession of the aughts, companies like GM and so forth and so on, who already oppressed their factory floor workers and that type of thing. And that gets into the whole idea of capitalism. The specter of the C word hangs over this whole conversation. All right. But there was this whole thing where the government decided to bail out the big corporations
instead of the people,
and
the
certain
banks.
people,
Banks too,
and the banks. Yeah, and the banks.
I remember.
Yeah, and so, and I remember Rock. Even before the election, they were trying to bring both sides together to go ahead and get the deal done, and Barack signed off on it. It's like, yeah, let's do it. For which he has since, nominally apologized. Even he's regretted that move. But that was an early sign. And I was trying to tell people, this ain't the radical leader. We cheering for brown skin. Is he better than a W? Well, I mean, that's low hanging fruit. Who isn't? But so we put into power a man who had brown skin, but a man who is still an arch capitalist, a man who is still an imperialist, very pro-military. We put in power a person who increased surveillance, despite all the lip service about being Oh, the most open administration ever. Yeah, and you also increased surveillance to new levels. You ramped up AFRICOM, Mr. Obama, the U.S. military presence in Africa, so that you can keep those countries under U.S. thumb. Mr. Africa, Mr. Son of Kenya, you
And
ramped
these are the
up.
conversations that people don't want to. Well, let me be very clear. These are the conversations a lot of Black people don't want to have, or the facts that they overlook because they borderline deified this dude, and it's like, no.
Exactly, exactly. And so all of these things have, we could go on and on. But you were the one who signed off on the $3.8 billion of weapons per year to Israel to go and kill Palestinians with. That was the one with brown skin. All this funding of Israel didn't start with Biden or Trump. Okay.
It's going
The
on for a
United
minute
States
now.
has been funding Israel for decades, and it got to new heights under the guy with brown skin. So, say all that to say, you put the critical analysis on Brock, on the Clintons, on Joe Biden. We don't even have time to talk about Joe Biden and all the history of racism and the history of militarism and what have you, so forth and so on. And I don't care if she is my fellow Howard University Bison. I don't care if she looks good in her power suits, and so forth and so on. But Kamala, you in this bag too. Kamala, you are pro-cop, pro-tough on border. We're going to increase border control. Ms. Kamala, I will not put any restrictions on Israel Harris. Quote, unquote. Quote, I will not put any restrictions on Israel. End of quote.
Trump too.
Infants burned to death. 6 years old being shot up and left to bleed while they call for paramedics. And when the paramedics come, they shoot the paramedics. Got folk in hospitals on IVs. We see the video of them burning.
But
Dozens upon dozens
my tax
upon
dollars are going.
dozens of thousands of Palestinians killed. And Palestine is a whole conversation we can have in and of itself. But yes, Ms. Harris, I will not put any restrictions on Israel Harris. And if she likes to, if she was a big part of the Biden administration, because I was a part of the Biden administration, okay, well then you were part of the responsibility also for the mass murder that the Biden administration was a part of. You are a mass murderer. Who's recording? I'm going to say it. In my book, you are a mass murderer, Ms. Harris, Mr. Biden.
Obama.
You were the one providing the weapons, knowing what the weapons were going to be used for, watching what the weapons you used for. You got all the intelligence in the world. Israeli soldiers, because of their brazen ass, posting the shit, showing you themselves what they're doing. These are Dems. So, and that's before you talk about domestic corporate policy, and again, the ramping up of the police state, which they tout and that type of thing. So this is the type of what you're talking about. So this is the type of critical analysis that has to be put on the Dems as well. So when you talk about this past election, and let me back up and say, I don't know if you ever heard it or not. I actually wrote a poem around the previous election, around the 2000 election, called Next Left, which is a critique of these mainstream Dems, which gets into what we're talking about. And so you talk about this past election. I knew coming into election night, it's funny. I was calmer election night than I had been for months, because for months I was arguing with people about the problem with the Dems as well as the Republicans, just what we're talking about. By election night, I was like, it's going to go down however it goes down. We're fucked either way.
See, you better than me. You better than me.
You're fucked either way. And then I'll finish the thought, and then I want to hear, where you want to go with it. Yeah. But so calm doesn't mean happy. Quite the opposite. I was unhappy. I was unhappy either way. Um, because we're either going to continue the subtle oppression, the oppression from the Dems that fools everybody, or the more or overt oppression. There's a lot we can say on that. I'm gonna fast forward directly to your question. I think what we've seen is even worse than we thought was going to happen. It's more ridiculous and more just absolutely, excuse me, brazenly fascist and dictatorial takeover and what have you than we thought. Um, Especially when you talk about the dismantling of the civil services, that even that caught me by surprise. Even as much of an asshole as we're talking about with Trump and his minions. So is it worse than the first term? Yeah, and the first term, of course, was horrible. So, when people say, and if folk want to say, oh, well, I bet you not so mad as Kamala now, because I didn't vote for Kamala. I live in Maryland. First of all, it wasn't a challenge for me. I knew
Right, it
Maryland
wasn't
was
about.
anyway. I could vote my conscience. All right, I voted for Claudia. I could have rolled with Jill Cornell or Claudia. Claudia de la Cruz is actually an old friend of mine. I've known her for more than 20 years. Who was running on the Socialist Party ticket, who I thought was a much better person for the job, and I voted for my conscience. I knew what Maryland was going to do. Had I lived in a battleground state, maybe it'd been a tougher choice.
Right.
But my point still remains, though, in terms of the Dems, is that we have to increase the critique. So are these early weeks, these early couple of months of the Trump regime part two worse than I thought they were going to be? Yes, they're worse than I thought they were going to be. But to kind of expand something you said, we, not only as Black folk, but we as Black folk and other people of color, as working class folk, as folk on the left, that type of thing, the work and the organizing to transform society was already calling to be done under Biden, under Trump, under Obama, under Hillary, had she won, because Hillary is as much part of the problem as Hillary and Bill is as much part of the problem as anybody else. It's the same thing. I knew coming through into election night, we were going to have to get to work either way. Either way. Mm-hmm. Now, it's worse than we thought it would be. Yes, I fully admit that. I have no qualms about admitting that. But we're going to have we have to have a whole radical transformation, a deconstruction of capitalism anyway. There's that C word again.
So it goes inward, which leads me to my next question, because I was shocked at the amount of kickback there was. Kane, I'll let you lead this off. I know I did, as in I took full participation in the boycott, the economic boycott at the end of the month. I did not spend a dime on Friday the 28th. Kane, how'd you do?
I spent a dime, but it was for Black business. My Black barber. That's it. So, so that's the only thing I spent. Other than that, I didn't spend on it. I waited till Saturday. But yeah, I don't know what else to say there. That's what I did.
I guess the question becomes, because what I found shocking, and this is my fault. I sometimes see the world through what I call rose-colored lenses, and I think certain things are so insanely obvious. Like, yo, if you're mad about not even just Trump, but big business, capitalism, there's that C word again, and so on and so forth, then the best way to send a message is what? Boycott. I thought this was a given. I was shocked at the amount of people who look like me and decided, I don't get it. What's the point? What's one day gonna do? Whatever. I'm like, are we serious right now? So I didn't spend a dime that entire day. Wanted to, because I was hungry, wanted a snack, didn't do it. You didn't. Mr. Analysis, did you boycott along with everybody?
I boycotted all of the major corporations. I came into the boycott with a framework of support your local small business, support your person of color owned small business, support your worker collectives and your co-ops, your cooperative businesses. I co-own one, so we stayed open. We we encouraged the boycott. We said, yeah, boycott these major corporations. We actually gave out free coffee if anybody did come in and that type of thing, you know.
That's what's up.
So as I kind of talked about it in the family text, you know, my aunt had actually texted about it, and that I finally got around to texting back that morning to the group family text, and I encourage folk to support their locally owned businesses, locally owned rad businesses, business of color. Even better if they're on the radical left. Most of my family doesn't understand what that is, so but I, you know, but I, whatever. And support these, because these are the alternative. These are the types of economics that we need to build. All right, these types of worker collectives, cooperatives, and so forth and so on. But yeah, but I, you know, things that you know you have to do through the mega corporate system. Yeah, I tried to do before, just waited till after, you know, gas upbeat the day before, so forth and so on. And to your point, I think that there's value in doing it. I haven't had a chance to hear any of the numbers, so it's hard to get metrics on these things.
Yeah,
How
I
much
was
they
wondering about that.
actually impacted in what have you. But I think that it's a good sign that people are thinking about how do we hit these folk, how do we hit these assholes economically. Is a one-day, one-off thing going to do it? No, of course not. So that's what, you know, I think some of the people are trying to say that. What is one day going to do? One day in and of itself is not going to do it. But one day starts to, we want to send a message and they don't care. Now, I understand. Trump doesn't care, but Trump wouldn't know a message if it hit him in his stupid ass and doesn't care about it.
No.
Elon Musk doesn't care about a message because he's got too much money to worry about caring about a message. But in terms of trying to come together and beginning to show some kind of unified action in terms of using the economics as a weapon, and attacking the mega capitalists and mega corporations, I don't mind the day. I think the day was a good idea. What I do think, though, is that there's continued political education that needs to be done so that people don't just think, okay, well, I participated in a boycott, that didn't do anything, so I'm not going to do anything else. No, there's always the Panthers used to always talk about the need for political education. All the Panthers chapters around the country, political education, political education, political education. They meet, they came. Black Alliance for Peace does that now, you know, in much the same way. It is part of the raison d'etre of Red Emma's Bookstore Coffee House to be an info shop of conscious history and political analysis and information, what have you. So that needs to happen. And then there needs to be continued economic organizing to build up, again, local cooperatives, collectively owned businesses that present different economic models as opposed to the mega corporations where the CEO is making 300 and something times the factory floor worker. You know, so there needs to be continued education and economic action.
And I think
that was
about
true. Going back to our previous conversation, that was going to be true if
no matter
Harris
what.
won. That was going to be true if Trump won. It's always been true. That needs to happen one way or the other.
And as a fan of Rage Against the Machine, I always think about one of my favorite bars from Zach De La Rocha. It has to start somewhere. It has to start sometime. What better place than here? What better time than now? Like the bus boycott, the infamous bus boycott was 300 and some, about a year long. So it took a year to have the impact where they finally relented and was like, okay, y'all can sit in front of the bus now. But it took a year, but it started from one point, and I was amazed. And I'm hoping you two can't, but I've said this, and what has blown my mind is the more I've delved into pro-blackness, the more I've tried to be more intentional about the uplifting of blackness and where my money goes. one of our fellow poets, Complex, has always said something that stuck with me. Who you give your money to is who you give your power to. And I'm like, it's a simple thing, but it's true. And what has always struck me is the further I've delved into trying to be intentional about pro-blackness, about black liberation, the most static I get from about that is from people who look like me.
Your own people. Be your own people. That's
It's just so weird. Like, I'll go somewhere like, yo, is it a black option? We might be out somewhere trying to find something to eat. Yo, is it a black-owned restaurant? Man, we hungry. We can go grab something, right? And that's my point. Like, we gotta be intentional if this is all to work and change. But as long as you got, coontastic people like Mayweather, oh my bad, we'll get to that. But as long as you got folks who can't direct their spending in one day, it's like it makes the mountain seem insurmountable. It makes it seem like we can't climb the mountain. And that's just looking at metrics. When you look at the black dollar in this country and the bullshit, and Dr. Umar says this all the time, all of the bullshit we spend money on, there is no reason we can't help each other.
I like that statement from Complex, though. I like that quote from Complex.
Who you give your money to is who you give your power to. It always stuck with me. I'm like, yo, so where are my dollars going? Who am I giving my power to? Because unfortunately, here's that word again, capitalism. The power of the dollar, 50 cent, is key. And I'm like, so who you giving your money to, who you spending your money with, that's who's ultimately got the power. And I'm like, another interesting metric, and I'm sure that you all both aware of it. I think I read that a dollar stays in the Jewish community for about 11 days, something to that effect. And a dollar stays in the black community about half a day. And that might be being generous, which is
something like that. Whatever. I've heard similar statistics depending on what year it was. We have to organize our dollars, and again, because I'm speaking not only as a member of the African diaspora, as a black person in this country, but also as a person on the left, and as a co-owner of a multiracially owned worker collective. It's not just spending it in terms of black business, but because some people will look at that and say, well, so-and-so mega company's got black CEO and a couple of black VPs. All right, so give them money. Yeah. But what I'm talking about and what you're talking about is support that black business is trying to build up, trying to do it. And also cooperative business, collective business, things that are trying to do it for the community, things that are trying to make sure that a fair wage, that a legitimate wage and power structure and decision making is in the hands of the people who work there. With the people who work
there. What a novel idea.
What an interesting idea, but no, everybody wants to, criticize all of the Marxists and the anarchists who've been saying this for a couple hundred years because they done watched too many movies and shit, and those are those evil people, and we had to kill them and go bomb them and arrest them here in this country. When all they were trying to say is, as you say, hey, what if the workers actually gain the money that their sweat and blood produced?
But bars, like what a novel idea. Like, and I think this is just amazing when you start understanding, and I get why they want to burn books. Minimum wage is supposed to be the full thing. Minimum wage is supposed to be the minimum wage you make in order to sustain yourself. No, you're not supposed to be able to drive a brand new Bugatti. I woke up in a new Bugatti. No, that's not the case. You don't supposed to have a 5-bedroom house. No, but minimum wage should be the minimum amount of money you can make to sustain, have food, shelter, clothes, foreign transportation. The national minimum wage is still $7 and change.
It's insane. It's ridiculous. Blatant. It is a blatant, bold-faced slap in the face to the workers of this country, to the people of this country. That is still the case. And it will come up with all kinds of bullshit arguments to say why it has to be the case, and why we still have to pay the people at the top because they're the ones that generating the wealth that will trickle down to the lower people and so forth and so,
Yeah,
The Reaganomics trickle-down effect, that
yeah.
bullshit.
A
Right.
country that prints its own money and just appears out of thin air because
It's ridiculous.
$1 trillion of
Oh,
debt.
and then we don't have money for social services. We don't
Right.
have money. Motherfuckers, you just sent another $12 billion to Israel to go kill more children.
Yeah. Then we had Ukraine. Now they're trying to walk
And
that back.
you
Yeah.
have money. There is money.
It's unlimited. It's on a computer. We make it up.
Well,
We print it.
here's what it's interesting. I was today years old when I learned this, and you should always dig, dig, dig. So maybe I was wrong about Ukraine. So to someone who hasn't done the homework, I get it. I get the look of it is, hey, we sending a whole bunch of money to a place that got nothing to do with us. That's actually not true. I forgot the name of and I will go home, do more homework, and get all the facts straight. But the gist of it, I think I sent it to you came before we started. Actually, once upon a time in the 90s, Ukraine was home to the third largest nuclear stockpile. In agreement to disarm that stockpile, they were supposed to receive protection from the US, and if I'm not mistaken, from Russia, but you can honestly see they have reneged on that. So it's not just
What a why?
there's money being sent over to take care of a war that landed. No. There were promises and assurances made based on their disarming themselves. So if you have the third largest nuclear stockpile, that means you're behind here and Russia. And if your next door neighbor has the second largest nuclear stockpile, I'm sorry, it only makes sense that, look, just in case y'all wild out, I might want to make sure I can take care of myself. And then everyone comes together and says, check this out. You might want to disarm all that, but don't worry, we got you. So with that whole BS with Zelensky a few days ago, where he pretty much looked like the wrong end of a Jerry Springer show, it context matters. There were assurances made that need to be lived up to, because if you tell me, yo, give me all your guns, but I got you. You got me? I got you. And then I give you all my weaponry, and your man fucking say like, nah, actually, I'm gonna roll on you anyway. Where's my help? You said you got me, right?
That's not even the full truth because it's like I don't know what is true anymore because we're all being fed something, and we'll never be fed the full truth of anything. I realized that, but then the whole reason why Russia started this whole war with them is because they tried to join NATO. When Russia said don't do that,
that's another layer too.
so it's like,
again,
well, I wasn't going to mess with you. All you had to do was just not join them because I know you joining them, us can put a base right there looking at
right
you.
there.
And NATO didn't even
say,
and
there
NATO
lies
is
that problem because I
NATO,
don't trust you.
and
I
NATO
don't.
is crazy. And NATO is crazy because they tried to side up behind Russia's back. They was like, all right, and then they said, never mind, you good. So they left them out to dry.
Yeah, NATO, the whole NATO thing is a part of the problem. So
Yeah,
again, we got to zoom out and look at the whole Cold War and the whole capitalist thing and the whole imperialistic thing. NATO has always been a problem. NATO has been problematic. NATO has been the kind of the gang of the Western capitalists to strong arm Europe and threaten other places and that type of thing. So yes, part of the problem was the expansion of NATO, which wasn't necessary, but because Western powers are imperialistic and greedy and power hungry, they did. And Russia was like, what the fuck? So that was definitely problematic. Do I think that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is wrong? Yes, of course. All right, that shouldn't have chill on that. You shouldn't have done that. But people do have to realize that the West has some responsibility for
Right.
for this, clearly. Um,
It's
now,
the Cuban Missile Crisis reversed. Like
right,
we
right,
we we shit ourselves. The U.S. shit themselves when Russia set up missiles next door in Cuba. Like what you doing?
right. There you go, exactly. Now the thing about Russia now, and for listeners, I'm no scholarly, expert on Eastern European politics and what have you. So I'm not the authoritative word on this. But part of the problem in terms of Russia and Ukraine, one of my colleagues and I were just talking about this other day. And as a matter of fact, it's my colleague has to be Ukrainian American. So, he has heritage over there, but a very rad left conscious state, sharp political analyst. And I kind of both agree. Part of the problem with Russia and Ukraine is that it's assholes versus assholes. As far as the government, I talk about the grassroots people. If anybody's listening, no, but part of the problem is that people on the ground in Russia, have been protesting against, Putin's government and what have you, have been in prison and so forth and so on, and that type of thing. So, we're not talking about grassroots Russians, grassroots Ukrainians, but in terms of the power and political structure, Russia versus Ukraine is assholes versus assholes because Ukraine has some when you talk about Zelensky and his crew that came to power, a decade ago, more than a decade ago, that was a right-wing crew. That's a whole set of real right-wing shit also. So nobody, the group that came to power, with, as I recall, and again, nobody quote me on this. We got to fact check me on this. But came to power with U.S. backing, with U.S. support, if I recall correctly, was a whole goddamn neo-Nazi right-wing setup anyway. So you got assholes versus assholes. So in and of itself, the Ukrainian government wasn't anything to invite them to the human rights dinner for.
Right.
All right. Having said that, I don't think Russia should be invaded. I think it's wrong for Russia to do that. But part of the thing that makes it such a difficult situation is that uh, if you talk about funding Ukraine for their self-defense, unfortunately, you talk about funding a right-wing setup. So I don't know if I were in decision-making positions or what have you, that'd be one of the tougher things for me because the whole Russia-Ukraine thing is a grand mess. I don't have any pat answers.
I mean, I'm just looking like understand a little bit more of the history. I'll send you guys the information, the intel like that. I was like, oh, but when you have the second largest nuclear stockpile on the planet next to the third largest, and y'all get beefing, this could go wrong for everybody.
Oh, roll think of sideways. There's a whole bunch of things that could have gone sideways in history, and this is a current one.
And I'm just no, go ahead, Ken.
I said, it's already getting bad because more countries are getting involved. Because NATO, what I seen, is getting involved actually now since we backed out. And then I don't know if it's true or not. I seen Canada and other countries getting involved. So yeah, WW3 incoming.
Let's. Okay, so this is not on our topics list. I just gotta say it. Feel free to jump in, but had a mini epiphany. I've been having those lately. Had a mini epiphany.
Uh-oh.
It would be really tragic when you think about it. So we have. You mean to tell me in 100 years, if it goes really left, in 100, 200 years, when our species is drastically depleted, you mean to tell me the same species that put a person on another planet couldn't figure out how to not destroy the one they're on? You the technology to finally make a car that drives itself and you can't feed people. It,
Greed and avarice is a hellified, Yeah, it's ridiculous. When you put it in the context that you just said it, I mean, it's mind-blowing, but it's absolutely ridiculous. I like that movie that David Sirota did, Don't Look Up.
I still got to see that. I heard it was good. I still didn't see it yet.
You gotta check it and let me know what you think of it. Have you seen it, Kane?
Nah, I haven't seen it.
Y'all check it and let me know what you think of it. I enjoyed that. I don't want to give it away, too much. I don't want you to do, but check that and just let me know what you think about it.
And she's like, you mean so we're at the point we've created artificial humans. We've got AI that can think. We've got, sex bots. We've created artificial human shit. And the actual real humans are going to kill each other over wealth because you wanted to hoard everything.
It's a ridiculous thing. I mean, and it plays out. What you're talking about plays out. First of all, you already saw it in the nuclear weapons. That's what, in terms of our training of thought. And for decades, we've had the powers that be. I don't like to use we with them anymore. But anyway, these knuckleheads around the world have had the capacity to destroy human life hundreds of times over. And still have that capacity. All those weapons are still there. All right. So that insanity alone is ridiculous. Then you move into the climate catastrophe.
Ooh.
The fact that we are destroying the planet, the fact that the planet is screwed from an ecological standpoint.
I try not to think about that, but yeah.
Yeah, and so, but again, the avarice and the greed that causes people to just go along their merry, make a capitalist way and keep doing it. It's insidiously capitalist. It is anti-indigenous because indigenous philosophy and theory and ecology from around the world has talked for years upon years upon years about how this is not going to work, and indigenous people have known this, but nobody wants to listen. It's absolute madness, and the avarice of these folk keep on. And I honestly don't think, you hear many indigenous folk talk about thinking in terms of 7 generations down, that type of thing, as the old expression goes. And I honestly don't think that Musk and the rest of these 1% bastards even care. They don't care about their own descendants. They don't care about that. I don't think they care about their own grandchildren.
That's right.
Well, let me rephrase that. They figure they'll have enough money so that their own grandchildren will be fine, but they won't care about their grandchildren's atmosphere or society or life or generation, just to make sure that they have enough money for their own grandchildren. I mean, it's a ridiculously it's a juvenile. It's but
like
that's
if the aliens came, how do you explain this to them? Like, so y'all got this is what y'all did. You had all of this ability, and the best y'all came up was wealth inequality. Like if the aliens showed up, I can't explain this.
Yeah, they'd be shaking their head. What the fuck y'all doing?
Or they'll say good job.
If they were those types of aliens, big capital aliens,
Hey.
Oh man, so much to talk about. I'm talking. I know we got things on our list. I want to make sure we get to our list because I have something extremely unimportant to talk about after all of this high philosophy and important these crucial matters that we are rightfully discussing. I do need to ask you. We
got another 30 minutes, so go for it. We get to where we get to.
With all of this, with all the high, the weightier matters of the world that we're talking about, I need to ask y'all down there in Central Texas, are y'all still breathing all right now that Luka done gone out to the Lakers and whatnot? And how's that playing out? Did y'all give a good warm welcome to AD and all that?
Oh, listen. For 3.5 quarters, everybody was cool. For 3.5 quarters, when AD looked like all world, everybody was cool.
Welcome.
As soon as he got to reach into the southern border,
It
pun
was done.
intended in Texas, as soon as he got to reaching for the southern border, everybody got mad again. Like, I can't believe it. Um, so yeah, they still salty. They still salty because ultimately, and here's the thing: I don't know how much conspiracy theory it is versus fact, but the going thought that no one wants to say out loud is ultimately this is a play to move from Dallas to Vegas.
Yeah,
But
you can look at their owners and what their history is. That's exactly what they do. There's no other reason to do this other than business.
do
There's
you? So
none.
I go back to what you and I debated about.
There's none.
Do you want to play some? Do you want to pay somebody
Yes.
that is shown
So
that
what?
hey, I could be in LeBron shape. I'm choosing not to be.
And still
Do
gets to
you
the
want to
final.
pay that guy 300 million?
This is not Zion. No disrespect to Zion. Luka can play out of shape because he doesn't use athleticism anyway. He just took you to the finals. What are we talking? He
Tell
was
me,
fat then.
tell me more about the owner because I've been so out of touch. I don't really know anything about this owner, and
Well, that's the thing.
I thought I
Cuban
had
doesn't own the team.
heard something about her being
Casino.
ultra right or something, and I don't know what I heard, or I don't know what's true or not true. But my mind, my mind is still stuck in Mark Cuban's Mavericks. So who are these new from an ownership standpoint? Who are these? Who is this new owner? What are these?
I mean,
I didn't realize until this trade happened that Cuban wasn't owner no more. Because I'm like, this
Oh,
doesn't
I
seem
thought
very
I was the only
Cuban like.
one. I wasn't. I was trying not to say that because I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of your listeners.
I had no
I missed
idea
it.
until the trade happened. Like,
I was like, Mark Cuban's not the owner. I
yeah,
right.
thought
I was
maybe
like,
it's just me. I was behind. I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of your viewers. But
because I think Mark Cuban pays Luka. I think these new dudes are not going to do it. I make it akin to my beloved Yankees. Look, when Steinbrenner was here, George, the boss, I don't care what it costs, get him here. But now since Hal and the boys then took over, they want a belt tightening all this other nonsense. That is not the Yankee way, but okay. Same thing here. If Cuban were here, I have no doubt Luka is still in Dallas,
he
but
said that.
Cuban ain't here.
He divorced his wife, and he meant it.
That's just,
so,
but yeah,
so I don't know. I don't know. And there's no disrespect to AD, but
yeah, because I'm like, AD is still a top 10 player in the game, and when we're talking just bigs, probably top three, especially since Embiid is out again.
Yeah.
so if his work, and I haven't really looked at the standings since the trade too much, so I don't know what's been happening. But if it works out, and if they figure out, if Kyrie and them and all of them figure out, all right, this is how we're gonna flow. Let's do it. Then they can still rock and roll.
If AD looks like bubble AD and the other bigs come back, Dallas is going to be a problem. Even for OKC, Dallas is going to be a problem. It's just you.
Still gonna lose.
Oh, I wouldn't bet on that, sir.
I
I,
would.
I wouldn't
They
bet on
play LA. They're losing.
if AD and their other big come back full strength, and you see now Kyrie is balling out again because there's no Luka here.
So where's Luca?
Dallas is a very scary team.
Luca, that's it. We're the second seed now. We've lost one game since Luca's been here. We're
Wait,
7
well,
win.
whoa.
We're the second
Lakers are a
seed.
4 seed.
We're the second seed right
As a Laker fan, yes.
now. Exactly. And Lucas and LeBron is playing like, stuff that he
Mm-hmm.
takes starting to kick in. So yeah. And then Luca is starting to be Luca again. It's
Yeah.
over.
I'm gonna have to look at some of the highlights because that was the other question just on the Lakers side of things. Um, you know, how is that going to work? Just in
It's
terms
working. It's
of
working really
LeBron
well.
and Luka, getting enough for you run things through Luka, you can run things through LeBron. And so how is all of that going to happen? Sometimes you need a court general. Look, talking about Texas, in those Spurs teams that I so loved, I really did. I love Pop, and I love those old the Spurs dynasty teams. And
As a Laker fan,
one of those teams was run by was point guarded by someone who everybody said he's just not good enough. He's too short. He doesn't score enough, and he'll never be a championship point guard. And he was a championship winning point guard, and that's Avery Johnson.
Avery
And
Johnson.
why I like that? Because Avery knew to do what a point guard knows to do. Avery ran that offense. Oh, he's too short. He still ran the offense. Oh, he's not a top scorer. You don't always need your point guard to be top scorer. So it's nice when it happens, if it happens with somebody. But if you got a team that doesn't need your top point guard to be a top scorer as much as you need him to be a point guard, and can run the offense, and Avery Johnson ran that offense and let everybody else go off, and they snagged them a championship. So say all that to say, sometimes you get these teams with these mega superstars. You need somebody that's going to run the offense, and like we're gonna get the ball to you, and get the ball to you over there, and we're gonna pass the ball, and we do good. Now I'm old and I'm old school in terms of basketball coaching and basketball theory is concerned, and that's some old school shit. I realize, as opposed to the let your run the ball through your superstar and let everything jump off of that. I'm not that person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
That's the John Stockton days.
Yeah. So say all that to say, we'll see. I mean, I was curious how it was going to play out in with the Lakers as far as
it's playing out very well. Yeah, it's playing out very well so far.
LeBron's taking the back seat. They're letting Luka be Luka, and they're playing well off each other. So they both can pass. They both can score. So it's basically you can keep one on the floor, and you always have pretty much a point guard every time.
And at least 2 or 3 times a game, it's a long deep out. That's all I can call it. It's pretty much a deep out. Get a rebound, throw it the length of the court because LeBron's on the other side already. Like they running football plays. It's wild.
And you got AR-15, man. No, we probably can't say that now. But yeah, Austin Reeves doing his thing, man.
Yeah, Austin Reeves doing his thing, and still got to keep connect. So, how far can this team go? I don't know. The problem.
I like Reeves. I like Reeves.
Reeves balling. I'm trying to think. The only team that scares me in the West is probably OKC because SGA he's becoming. I don't know who's more of an impossible guard, him or Ant-Man. Like, they're both impossible guards right now. Like, unless you're gonna resurrect old Ron Artest, I don't think there's close to anybody you can leave on them, anyone one-on-one.
See what happens in the playoffs.
What did you say, Kenny?
I said, we'll see what happens in the playoffs.
OKC's the number 1 seed, and it ain't even close.
No, I agree. But if Shea doesn't do this in the playoffs, they're cooked.
That's the thing about OKC. I don't think so. They've got enough depth and waves. Like when you
not enough to score. Like Shea is literally mostly their whole offense. So if he's off and everyone else ain't hitting, which can be.
I was going to say Shea got to play well, but I mean the team has got. We're saying something that you can say about it on any team in theory that their big names need to play well, but it still comes down to the whole team having to play well. The big names could play wonderfully. If the rest of the team ain't playing well, they will not win a playoff series. Your big names can play out game of their life. All right. But the team has to play well. And if you got to have it one way or the other, you'd actually rather have your big name have an off night on the rest of the team balling. You got a better chance of getting through a series than I watch in whatever sport we're talking about. Basketball, hockey, whatever the case may be. Sometimes you watch, a series, a 4 out of 7 series, and the superstar had an off series, but the team just barely managed to get through the series 4-3. because everybody else was rocking.
Boston.
You
It's
know?
gonna be it's gonna be fun to see. Everyone had their idea of a ceiling for what the Lakers was gonna be, but right now you might have to reevaluate because, and again, I drank the Kool-Aid as well. I'm like, you just got rid of AD, think you're gonna get another big in return. That trade gets rescinded, so you real thin up front. But they've been doing their thing. It had one of the top defensive ratings, so it's
Shout
like,
out JJ. Masterclass coaching.
we went to where? Where'd he go again? Oh, that's right, Duke. It's a great time to be a Devil fan. Great time to be a Devils fan. So Dunleavy, GM of Golden State, gets Jimmy buckets in Golden State. They've been balling. JJ, coach of the year. Zion, looking healthy. Tatum, looking lethal. It's just a great time to be a Duke fan. Just a great time to be a Duke guy. Yeah. Okay. And yes, I will take every opportunity because for years, Crapalina fans wanted to give me all kinds of shit. Okay, well, who's laughing now? Who's laughing now? Jordan left in North Carolina in 84. 84. Sorry, gonna have to let go of that jockstrap there, Carolina fans. Aww.
He done got started, y'all. We done got him riled up.
Just saying. Just saying, because Crapalina fans loved it. Oh, Jordan and Worthy. Yeah, shut up. Last person with a title was Tatum. Quiet on the set. Not happy he's in Boston, but I'll take it. Kyrie put the dagger in Steph Curry's face when Cleveland won their title. It's a Duke thing. It's a Duke thing. But this might be our last touch, but we'll see how it goes. It is Women's History and Black History Month, because every month is Black History Month, especially in this country. But in our Women's History Month, came across a jewel that I was not aware of. Yuri Kochiyama.
Coach
I
Young,
was not aware of her, but apparently she was right there at Malcolm's side when he was assassinated.
the picture, as people look at the photo, look at that picture, that's Yuri Kochiyama.
Doesn't nearly give him credit.
Yeah.
They were good buddies. They were, and what's undertaught among the many things that the powers that be don't really want us to know and take power from and understand is a lot of the organizing and support and togetherness of the radical left of that period across the racial ethnic groups. And unfortunately, this day you hear sometimes Black folk talk about, well, they ain't help us. Why should we go out and help them? Shut the hell up. That's historically not true, first of all. And it's just stupid anyway. That does not, you're not understanding strength and unity and whatever. But if you go back to that 60s time period, you had activists from across the groups of color that were learning from each other, in communication with each other, networking with each other, so that you had groups such as, obviously, the Black Panthers, but you also had the Yellow Tigers. All right, in terms of Asian Pacific Islanders. You had the Young Lords. All right, in terms of Latina, and they were actually not just Latina, but very Afro-Latin also in terms of makeup.
And this is why Fred Hampton had to die, unfortunately.
Say what?
I said, and this is why Fred Hampton had to die, unfortunately.
Wow.
Right, because he was talking about this, because he was working with the young patriots, the Appalachian whites that had moved up to Chicago, the hillbillies, had been in communication with them, and they were learning from the Panthers and so forth. So, of course, you had AIM, you had the American Indian Movement. Thank God, power to Leonard Peltier, who just got out of prison a couple weeks ago. Biden, one of the last things that Biden did was commute his sentence to house arrest. Now he's technically on house arrest. I think that was chicken shit on Biden's part, not to just go ahead and make it a full, thing. But he's out of prison and he's back up on the land. He's back up in North Dakota, after all these decades. But the American Indian movement, so you had these groups that knew each other, learning from each other, that were learning from each other, that were in communication with each other and doing these things. So when you talk about Yuri Kochiyama, Yuri's conscious radical thought was very much aware of and in line with Black radical thought, and what have you. And Malcolm knew this. And I very often when I talk, especially in the bookstore, get in conversation with people about Malcolm. And I like to point people particularly to about that last year and a half or so of his life, where his analysis and his thoughts and goals and what have you became even more global, in terms of networking with folk around the world, became even more multiracial. Okay. And of course, this is a time period after he broke with Elijah, but a good collection is called Malcolm X Speaks. Malcolm X Speaks, and it's a collection of his speeches from about that last year and a half or so time period of his life. And among his most powerful statements and powerful speeches from that time period. So the fact that he was networking with people like Yuri Kochiyama and others is should not come as any surprise. And so yeah, I share Yuri Kochiyama. Her granddaughter is on IG. What's her account?
I didn't know that. I gotta look that up.
I'll have to get it and send it to you.
Please
But
do.
I follow her because she's a conscious activist. I think she's still based in New York also. But yeah. And the granddaughter would talk about this. As a matter of fact, I think it's A. Kochiyama.
Okay.
I'm looking at it right now. A. Kochiyama. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm gonna look that up because it's just there are these lines that and I completely understand. Look, Black Power and Black Unity, but it gets I won't say blurry, but there's overlap between what we as black people in this country as part of the diaspora need and want, and what the quote unquote poor people or people not in the 1% needed want. There's overlap there. Fred Hampton saw it. I think King, towards the end of his life, saw it. Malcolm, after Mecca, saw it. Like, wait a minute. There are things that are very specific to each group, but there are certain commonalities we all have. And what we find is we are all under the thumb of white imperialist suppression, white imperialist oppression. Like that's the common thread. Like, look,
exactly.
If I'm gonna make the ribs and you gonna make what you gonna make, but the bottom line is we all got the same problem when it comes to getting the ingredients we need for the gumbo.
And this is why class analysis is necessary. It is crucial, so that you ask anybody, you go out into the Black community and say, "You want to fight racism?" Of course, hell yeah, we're gonna fight racism. First of all, people have to see racism as its structural oppression, not just the prejudice that somebody doesn't like you because of color skin. I mean, that's bad enough or annoying enough, but racism, in the way I use the terms, the isms, racism, sexism, heterosexism, classes, we're talking about structural systems of oppression.
Right.
But to understand racism, and to fight it, you also have to understand classism and class analysis in general. All right. The very rise of racism as we've known it the past 4 or so centuries, 5 centuries, largely comes out of economic exploitation. It's a class thing. Okay. So that if you are going to convince people to go and kidnap and brutalize people from one land and transport them and enslave them to another, that's an economic goal. Why are you doing that? For cheap labor. Okay. So talking about economic things. Now, you have to develop this evil mindset that will allow your people to think that they're better than these people.
And these people are property, like not even human.
Yeah, property. So you develop that whole mindset and all this bullshit, and they're less than human and they're ungodly and so forth and so on. So, that's where you get that whole prejudice coming in. And then as history played on, you know, it grew in racist forms because now that group, especially because that group is so different phenotypically and identifiable, um, we look much different than that poor Italian who's getting screwed over, that Irishman who's getting screwed over, and so forth and so on. Then the racism continues. But economic exploitation is across the board, and so class analysis is necessary. And you have had over the decades, over the years, people from different races and ethnicities, problematic is the term racist and all that, but different ethnicities, what have you coming together. So when you talk about Malcolm and Yuri, when you talk about these activist groups who we're talking about in the 60s, you go back before that, there were groups on the sly, on the low, working together. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Denzel and the Great Debaters. I don't know if you remember that. Can you ever see that? Called The Great Debaters. It was interesting. It was a dramatization of Black college debate team.
Mm-hmm.
Based on true story, what have you. As a matter of fact, a young I want to say a young James Farmer, what have you, was depicted. But one of the side things in that movie, one of the things that they actually had one or two scenes on was some of the secret labor organizing going on between poor blacks and poor whites, like back in the 30s and whatever. All right.
Mm.
Again, this comes back to the radical left. This comes out of, socialism, communism, anarchism has a long history in this country. It's not the history that the dominant culture wants you to think is the real history and all the Red Scare and that type of thing. There's been a whole lot of oppression of that thought because that is the type of thought that organizes the working class
And start shaking up
across
systems.
races. Yeah, across
Mm-hmm.
races. All right. So that has a long tradition, a long history. So yes, we had to think in terms of class analysis. We had to think in terms of how people across the board are being economically oppressed and how that must be overcome, and as you say, overcoming that imperialism, overcoming that capitalism.
Absolutely.
And no matter what color the people were doing it to us from, I don't care if it's the aforementioned black president, the aforementioned the other black presidents or candidate of recent months, or what have you. Working class, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist folk have to organize against the powers that be, no matter what color some of the oppressors may be.
Absolutely. And to that end, we will wrap this up. We keep this going for like another 2 hours, quite honestly. So you gotta come back, brother. You gotta come back.
I'd love to. I enjoyed it. It was fun. We didn't have time to do any poems because that one that I was telling you about that I wrote a few years next left actually speaks to a lot of the things we've been talking about.
Now, I definitely gotta come back. Definitely gotta come back. I mean, heck, if you free in the next 2 weeks, I do not have a problem running back. I don't even have a really broad recap here. I don't really know. I hope things change. I hope things don't. Well, let me. This is close to a recap I'm going to get. I'm hoping things don't descend even further into madness. I don't understand how there's I can't even say foreign national, but there's a person not of this country in the White House just doing pretty much running roughshod. It's the weirdest slash scariest shit I've seen. And like I said, I've been alive since the Reagan administration. This is unprecedented shit. I absolutely support boycotts of all sort. Anything to disrupt the chain of command, well, not chain of command, but anything to disrupt the system peacefully for now. Keywords are for now. I'm with it. Shout out to Yuri. Um, I don't. We'll have a larger debate on as far as compensation for art goes, especially when it comes to music and poets. And then that's pretty much all I got recap wise. Anyone want to recap? Hop right in.
I'll leave it to Kane first.
Um, yeah, the state of the country is the state of the country. Like I said, I hope it gets better, but it probably won't. 'Cause we got a whole lot of work to do, and this system, in a weird way, I kind of admire it because it's diabolically genius. Because it can live forever, and our own people are going to defend it, and they're going to keep pushing the division, and that's why I always bring back examples and we have today of, the civil rights era back in the day, how unity was actually being formed and they did everything they power to dismantle it for a good reason. So, and now they're doing everything in their power to keep the division going. And that's why we see certain headlines and certain stuff about races and all that. Even though I agree that we've been saying on the show for a long time that the final boss is class, not race, not the other isms, is class. And I encourage people, if y'all seen or haven't seen the movie Origin, it's a great movie. Talks about the caste system that we're all basically in a giant caste. I can't really explain it better than the movie can and her books can, but y'all can check that out. I think it's on Amazon Prime that you can buy.
Yeah, based on a book cast, Isabel
Yeah,
Wilkerson. It's a good book.
yeah.
She also wrote a very interesting thing that I highly recommend called The Warmth of Other Suns, which is about the Great Migration northward and westward of Black folk in the country. Really interesting book. Um, y'all recapped it pretty well. Just, we talked about all of that, and then less importantly, we talked about uh the Luka AD trade, but that's neither here nor there. It's been a joy just to be on, and I'm honored by the invitation to be here with the father-son team. How about that? I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that, and just get into some various things. And I'd love to come back. We'll figure out when it's going to be. I know it's been hard for us to even schedule this one, and with the way I am so busy at night, very often I know that scheduling with me is not easy. So I appreciate your patience, but we will figure out another time. And I don't know, I'm sure you would come up with all kinds of other things to talk about, tap back into some poetry or something or another. We didn't talk workout, we'll talk plant-based nutrition next time,
Indeed.
vegan nutrition for us working out folk, and I'm sure there'll be some weighty there will, of course, will always be on any given day some weighty matters to get into. But I very much appreciate it. I definitely welcome any of your listeners to catch up with me. Uh, liberationandpoetry.com is the site, at Analysis the Poet on socials, but continue to support Ross and Kane. Continue to support. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah, he said it.
Much respect.
That's it. And on behalf of myself, my amazing co-host, and our awesome, awesome guests, yeah, I said a podcast. Peace.
Yeah.